this new episode of Voices of Boost, the podcast series where we discuss big ideas, bold moves, opportunities and challenges in the energy and utilities industry. Today my guest is Nathalie Claes from Dadir, and today's topic is all about cybersecurity and resilience. Welcome, Nathalie.
Hi, Michel.
Can you briefly explain who you are, what your role is, and what you are actually trying to achieve with Dadir, your company?
Sure. My name is Nathalie Claes. I'm the leading lady. I prefer that over managing partner or CEO of Dadir. And with Dadir, we mainly help organizations with all sorts of compliance issues, mainly focused on information security, cybersecurity, but also quality management and GDPR-related questions. So what we try to do is to make the cybersecurity world a little bit less of a black box and more on the level of what CEOs, managers understand, and to really make it very operational and not something that comes out of an ivory tower, to really help people with pragmatic solutions for their challenges.
All right, that sounds very clear. I'm wondering, Nathalie, what the biggest weaknesses are that you see when you're consulting companies. Are those more technical issues that you notice, or is it more to the human side, the way how people work with data and such things that are actually...
For me, it's definitely the human part. Two sides of that. At one side, with a lot of companies that I consult for in Europe, still think that it's not going to happen to them or that they don't have any trade secrets. So that's why they're not so concerned about it. And the other part, it's your weakest and your strongest link. Basically, it's the human side, the way that people work, the way that people handle their data, the way that people try to find shortcuts, because picking up your phone every 3 minutes to do the multi-factor authentication, as everybody is well aware by now, can be very annoying. So people try to find a shortcut to make their life a little bit easier. And it's always a balance between convenience and security. And that's really what we try to look for. But putting some effort in explaining what things can go wrong and what everybody's role in the bigger picture is really crucial.
Yeah, you have a lot of tools for doing your job, actually. You've also written a book, by the way.
Indeed.
I've read that. So it was an interesting read. But you also have some thing called like a security scan. How does that actually work, and what do people expect from that? Yeah,
so the security scan is really something that we use when organizations come to us and asking, okay, we know that we need to do something about security, and my IT guy has also told me that we do stuff, but we want to know where are we exactly and what are the biggest gaps that we have. And what we do through the security scan is really look at 3 areas within the organization. Obviously, the people part we look at the organizational part. How is your organization structured? What kind of policies, guidelines do you already have in place? And are they in place in paper and stored somewhere safely where nobody in the organization can find them? Or are they actually being used and read? And then we also do a technical scan where we look at IP ranges, how your AD has been set up, what vulnerabilities that you haven't patched and where you need to have a look at. So that gives you a high-level overview, not very deep in detail, but that gives you a sense of urgency, basically, where are the topics that you need to put some emphasis on. And based on that security scan, we always come with a roadmap over a couple of months, sometimes years, depending on where you want to go to. Sometimes it's a certification, sometimes it's something else that the organization can decide to do all by themselves, or that they can use other partners to implement.
Yeah, and I can imagine that smaller companies don't really have dedicated people on board to overlook all those policies and frameworks and such things. But you also offer a service, a DPO as a service?
Yes, we offer DPO as a service, but also CISO as a service or IT compliance as a service, which is really focused on the small and medium businesses that don't have the budget to really have a full-time CISO or full-time DPO on board, but really want to have somebody who can help them put the strategic path out there and have the discussions with other management in the organization and help keep the people that are in their IT department to really make the right decisions and move them forward. So you get a really close relationship. It's not something we're in those organizations, depending on what they choose, for 2, 3, 4 days a month, sometimes even more, to really stay close to every customer, to really bring them up to speed to any changes that are happening within the legislative situation as well. This week, big announcements are about to happen with regard to GDPR. So that's something that we follow really closely. And if some decisions are taken by courts, we inform our customers so that we can play very short on those things and that we can make those changes. Yeah,
that sounds very handy because there's a lot of legislation around cybersecurity and resilience.
Yes.
And you also have like these standards, the ISO 9001 and the other famous one, the 27001. How do you see, can you maybe explain what the difference between the two is and what the relation to cybersecurity then actually is?
So there's different types of legislation obviously as well. So we have, for example, the NIS2 directive, which is legislation that has been put out by Europe. But that legislation, that directive still needs to be transposed in local legislation. So as Belgium, we were one of the first, actually the first one to transpose it in national legislation, where every country within Europe can tweak the directive a little bit. You can't change it completely, but you can make it more strict than the European one does. So whatever is in the law, you're obliged to follow. If you don't do that, you will get fines or you have some issues with your personal liability and those kind of things. So I always compare it with a black and white striped pajama. And so if you don't follow that, you may end up in one of those. Everything that is related with certification, like an ISO 27001, can help you to be compliant to the law and the legislation. And for example, Belgium made the decision that when you're ISO 27001 certified for the full organizational scope, that's enough evidence for them that you adhere to the NIS2 legislation. But that's basically a choice that you as an organization take. So you choose to be compliant with ISO 27001 or 9001 or 42001, which is AI related. But there's nothing that tells you that you need to do that. However, when you look at public tendering and those kind of things, it almost becomes like a mandatory thing, because if you don't have the certificates in place, you can most likely not apply to the tender. So it's a little bit in the gray area. Yeah.
So it's almost like a mandatory check in the box, but also a benefit for the
obviously.
company,
if you implement it correctly, it should serve as a benefit, and it should serve as a tool to improve your organizational.
Yeah. I can also imagine if you go to companies to consult them or to help them or guide them through those types of certifications, that sometimes processes emerge that are actually in no way compliant to one of the standards. What are the biggest challenges actually when consulting companies? When you look at their processes, do they often need to redesign processes, or how should I look at that?
It depends. In a lot of organizations, there's no such thing as a process. There is a common way of doing things. People know because they joined the company and people told them this is how we do it, but nobody has actually taken the time to write it down. So that means that it's still a little bit to the individual person to do it the same way or deviate a little bit. So the first step is always to really document it. And that's when you audit, because I don't only implement, but I'm also an auditor. When you audit, it's always useful to have something in writing, and then you can check, okay, what you've written down, is that what you actually do? So that's usually the biggest step. In other instances, mainly related to information security, it's that what you've written down is not what you're actually doing, because if you don't write the policies and procedures down exactly the way you're doing it, you're writing down an a what if scenario at the best way possible, while in reality you're cutting corners or you're not doing that, and that will also become a challenge. So that's always something that I tell my customers. I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I don't want you to lie or write something down that you're not willing to do. Just write down what it is, and then we see what the gap is, and if there is a gap, because that's the thing, not every organization is NASA, not every organization is a hospital, so you don't need to have the same security measures for all organizations. So that's where we play a little bit with the requirements that are required.
Yeah. And when I refer back to your book, there's like a statement, hacked, what now? Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by that? Or what was the idea behind the title of the book and the content?
Yeah, so in my career, it's now 20 years that I'm consulting with companies. And that's the first sentence, or the first, if something happens, everybody goes like, oh, how the hell did this happen? While there are always in an organization small pieces of information that already give it away that something is going wrong. And I wrote the book really from out of the perspective of a manager. So somebody with no IT knowledge whatsoever, because IT guys and girls, and I say it with the most love that I have, they're really good in using acronyms or very difficult words and then explaining it very difficult, so that nobody understands anymore what the goal is. And it's not their fault. They're in that IT world, but to explain it to somebody without that knowledge, it's always a challenge. So my goal was really to write it so that basically my mom and my grandmother would understand, so that management also understand that it doesn't need to be very difficult or very expensive. And not every organization needs to spend €1 million to implement very fancy technical tools. You can already do a lot by putting focus on your employees, by really understanding how a phishing attack looks like and know how you can react. So that was the behind the scenes a little bit. Yeah.
We had another guest in one of our podcasts, and he made a statement. Every organization has been hacked already. It's just a matter or if they know it or not.
Yeah.
Is that also something you agree to?
Yeah, for sure. And it will happen on a micro level, and they won't be able to move transversely in your organization. But I do think that there is no way that there is an organization that can say, oh, nothing has happened before, because we all have employees that click on a link because the email is very intriguing, because you want a laptop or you need to choose something that really looks to you and that appeals to you, and you click, and then it can already go wrong in a small or major effect.
Yeah, indeed, exactly. In a world of emerging new technologies, I can imagine that also cyber threats are using those kind of technologies, like AI, for example. How do you see those technologies being used to actually attack companies or spy on companies?
Yeah, there's also a chapter in my book where I talk about the Nigerian prince. We all know those. I'm a Nigerian prince and I inherited so many millions and I need a bank account to store it with a lot of spelling mistakes. They still happen in that way, but it's less common. What we see nowadays with the use of artificial intelligence is that a lot of employees already know if we get an email from our CEO asking us to transfer $2 million or €2 million to another account just because he asked, we need to ask a couple of questions. So we already are at that point. But with the use of AI, even if you set up a Teams meeting, it is possible to have a real deepfake video where you see the image of your CEO with the same voice of your CEO. And if you ask, okay, can you confirm that it was you that told me that I need to wire or transfer money, that says yes. And that gives you the confidence that you're talking with the correct person, while in reality, it's not. And that makes it really difficult. Even if you're very technical, it's a challenge to really check, okay, is it the right person? And you only can circumvent that by finding very funny but very secure solutions, like make sure that you have like a code word that you use in something, and that the CEO needs to use another code word back so that you know what it is. Then it's obviously important that you don't write it down in a Word file and put it somewhere in your network. But if it's something that you've agreed upon in a conversation, use that. And that will be ways that we will be able to ensure ourselves that we're talking to the right people. And it's a bit scary that we need to go to those efforts. Indeed.
But I think the code word tip should work well and could make meetings a bit more fun as well.
Yes, for sure.
Are there other tips and tricks like that you can share in our podcast now for our listeners and viewers that they could use in their day-to-day work or personal life?
Yeah, so for me, it's don't make it too overcomplicated for your employees. I do know that there are a lot of technical solutions out there, and most of IT guys and girls are really very fond of them. But try to look at what are the cherries that you can still pick, and really focus on that awareness. And don't do awareness in a one-time PowerPoint and redo it every year, but really try to look at, okay, what are scenarios that have already happened within the organization? And what are incidents that come to IT, like, oh, I've got this link and I clicked on it, not with telling the names, but really giving real life examples and explaining to employees, okay, this could have gone wrong in such and such way, and this is what we expect you to do. This helps employees to get the feeling that it's not something that happens with Stad Antwerp, for example, or with Duvel, but also within the organization that you work for, no matter how big or small it is. And that really gives them that extra trigger to really be aware about it.
Yeah. And then maybe going back to the frameworks and certifications, where do you see the place of the GDPR legislation actually in all the security sense of things?
Yeah, GDPR is always hand in hand with everything that is cybersecurity, and not everything that is cybersecurity is GDPR related, but a lot of things that are, or almost everything that is GDPR related is cybersecurity related, because the GDPR legislation really talks about your personal identifiable information. So names, addresses, social security numbers, but also health information. So for those kind of informations, and there was a hack 2 or 3 weeks ago in the Netherlands about gynecologists at the national investigation about female citizens that had their data stolen, and it's out there in the dark web. So for those kind of data, you really want them to be secured. You want them to be protected. You also want to make sure that you don't share them with other organizations when they don't have any issues with that, or that they don't need that information. So it really goes hand in hand, and it's the same with AI and GDPR, and it's the same with cybersecurity and GDPR. So they really go hand in hand. That's why the role of a CISO usually goes hand in hand with the DPO, and they're often combined in one person as well.
Yeah, it seems like having the right knowledge in-house or through a partner like yourself is actually very valuable.
Yeah, it's crucial. It's not something that you can put on somebody else's shoulders just because he has an IT background or he or she knows something about it. You really need to have the time and the dedication to really keep up the pace with everything that changes, and to really make the connection with what's happening in the organization as well. So you need to have a little bit of the operational knowledge, and you need to have the background of the legislation and the frameworks and everything that's happening.
Yeah, because that was also something I was wondering, how do you actually stay up to date with all those the evolutions and changes that are constantly happening actually?
Yeah, it's a never-ending story. So I do spend a lot of time in attending courses, webinars, conferences, and I am also part of DPO circles where we share on a quarterly basis what were the court decisions, what will be the impact on the legislation, but where you also can talk with other people in the same role to understand how they handle things, and that really those people sometimes tackle it in a different way, so that really increases your knowledge. It's not something at the cybersecurity area like artificial intelligence, like privacy. It's not something that you know today and that's the same even tomorrow. So it changes on a day-to-day basis, and you really need to take the time to to stay up to date and spend a lot of time and sometimes money in increasing your knowledge.
Yeah, and then it's indeed good to learn from peers and real life situations or things that have happened.
Correct.
If you could give one final piece of advice to our listening or viewing audience, people who would like actionable advice on how they could improve the security status actually of their company, what would that be?
Well, first of all, read my book. Secondly, that would be talk with the people that are really working in your organization, and don't go on a report that you get, but really investigate for yourself and get actionable results. Do a high-level security scan. Your IT department can most likely do it yourself as well, but really check what you can do and put a lot of focus on the awareness. With putting focus on awareness and getting your people involved, that will already help a lot. And will cost the least amount of money. Yeah.
Everyone needs to start somewhere,
Indeed,
isn't it?
correct.
Yeah. All right, Nathalie, I would like to thank you for this conversation. You scared me a little bit, but I have your book, so I'll read it, then I'm good.
Thank you, Michel.
We'll see you soon in the Boost event as well.
Correct.
And we'll also post some information about your book in the information underneath our podcast post.
Great.
So the viewers and listeners can find all information there. So thank you once again, Nathalie, for joining the podcast. And thank you to our audience for tuning in again to this new edition of the Voices of Boot podcast. And see you in our next episode.